Hi, my name is Sam. This is channel Shadow Harvest. Sometimes they're videos, sometimes they're not. Life and etc. But I realized that as I've been like trying to like build up my plants and look in magical associations and use herbs and stuff more frequently, or like I kind of suck at it. Like really do. Like I'm too distracted at times, but I have questions, lots of questions, and I figured we discuss this about like the energy of certain ingredients and stuff, and how, when do we cleanse them? When is there too much of an energetic marker? And you'll see what I mean. For one, I wonder sometimes if we neglect our plants or if we're not too good with them and we abuse them a little, maybe a little, you know what I mean? Like, for example, I have this parsley plant that I constantly, it's not happy. I think you can tell. Like, it needs, parts of it are just, it's just very sad, quite honest. Like, it's not, I water this frequently, and sometimes when it's like dead like this, I take the little dead bits off after my neglect, and then I like grind it up and use it on my candles. Is the plant mad at me? Is it not gonna work as well with my spells? You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense? So I recently had a romantic dalliance, ended up not working out. And we had a very weird interaction. This is during Mercury retrograde and all that, so I'm kind of blaming it on that. I mean, we went and got a cup of coffee and discussed things more and kind of realized that, like, yeah, like this is kind of why it's not going to work out, and that's fine. It sucks, but it was just kind of like a weird heavy walk. And as we're walking, there is a man walking towards us, and there's a dog holding this big old sign, and I'm kind of like, what is the dog doing? And as I'm reading the sign and realizing that like the sign, I figured it's like, oh, this is like a unhoused gentleman, and he has a bunch of roses in his hand. I'm like, oh, he's probably like selling the roses, trying to get a little bit of money. And as I'm reading this sign, trying to see exactly what the sign says for the dog who is walking with him, the man just reachingly hands out, and I realize as I'm reading the sign is something about like, don't want anything, just trying to spread some happiness in this world. These are free. And he hands them to my, we weren't really ever together, but like, you know what I mean? Like my whatever, who's walking a little bit like next to me, but also behind me, he hands them 2 roses. Which, like, here those are now. I'm trying to like dry them out a little bit, hanging them a bit by the window to get the petals to dry. And I was like, okay, so one weird sign just in general, that we very much agree that like this is not gonna work out between us. What free ingredients? Like, I got limited funds, you know, like I'm a cheap woman. I ain't dealing with that, you know? So I was like, okay, so what do I do? Do I then smoke, cleanse the roses, a little bit of incense, you know what I mean? Is hanging them here and using my energy. Maybe I put like my little cauldron here with some cleansing incense, and it will rise up and like, you know, purify them in some way. Or because like this was a weird energetic marker, or like maybe a sign from the universe or something, I shouldn't touch the roses if I don't want to reconnect or you know, use them in any, like, it's kind of weird in that way. And I have the same question then, because I have a bunch of blessing spells that I use with another relationship, and of course I have a bunch of leftover wax from those candles, and I was gonna remelt them into another candle. And at some point, one of my friends was like, oh yes, you're gonna like throw out all the wax, right? Because it's got like all that weird stuff from the previous relationship in there. And I was like, well, no, I was gonna like cleanse it and reuse it. Like, I can't just like throw that all away. Like, it's not a wax, it's not a candles. Like, I can't be buying stuff all the time. And she was like, oh, well, you don't feel like that's tainted at all? And I was like, well, I didn't. I figured I could cleanse it. But then I kind of wonder, how often are little pieces of ingredient, a little bit of energetic marker is stored into a ingredient, if it's not properly cleansed out, etc. and so forth, does that carry it on to your spells? Does it make it less effective, not as potent, what have you? I was thinking the same way when it comes to crystals and sustainable. I've spoken about before with sustainability, being concerned about the fact that, hey, if this was not sustainably gathered, if there were some human rights violations in acquiring, would that have seeped into the crystal? Would that energy have continued on to me in any way, shape, or form? And is it possible to entirely, say, cleanse out something from an object if it's kind of part of its like acquirement, you know what I mean? Like it's one thing to be like, oh, the man handed me the roses. I feel like that's cleansable, you know what I mean? Like that energetic marker, that significance, that relationship is cleansable. It's a little harder when there is my magic and my intention, I think, imbued into something, and I'm trying to like remix it into a different type of intention. I feel like that's a little trickier with magic at times. And I feel it's even weirder when if the very like acquiring of the crystal, like the pulling it from the earth had some sort of like negative association attached to it, I feel like that's even harder to really wrap around. And so I guess I'm just kind of posing this out to everyone, kind of rambly, kind of whatever, but I feel like this is a question that I have a lot of times of how potent at times do you feel you need to cleanse your items, magical tools, ingredients, what have you. How often are you like kind of like scraping, like really like getting in deep with your cleansings to make sure that something is good for another magical spell? How often are you, you know, maybe just doing a really quick like, it's good enough, you know what I mean? Or are there other times when you're like, something about the energy feels a little too sticky, a little too off, it needs something deeper, right? Like this needs a nice exfoliating level of cleansing. Anyway, that's kind of been my opinion as I'm like putting all these different ingredients and stuff together. Comment down below what you're feeling, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.